the ability to opens you up to more opportunities than being afraid that everyone wants to steal your stuff or take your stuff. So I can say, like, without a doubt, having to just let go of the chance that someone can steal my stuff has actually opened up the opportunity for me to trust, like, a lot.
All right, good morning. This is another edition of the Journey to Freedom podcast. I'm Dr. B. I am your host. Oh man, as always, and if you guys have been following me and subscribed to this stuff, you realize how excited I get talking to people. And, you know, especially Black men who are doing things in this world that are making a difference and an impact. And it's not every day that you probably run into folks that are making it happen. We have so much exciting. I do a podcast on Sunday nights, what's called Why Love Waits, and we're trying to explore why this cross between Black women and Black men isn't happening for families. You know, when we think about families where 50%, almost 50% of Black women, like 49 point something percent of Black women over the age of 40 have never been married. And of that, you know, of that 50% that have never been married, 75% of them all have one child, at least one child. So you think of that statistics and you go, what has happened to our families? What has happened to, you know, the groups of folks? And I'm excited you're having a baby coming up here pretty soon, and that's super exciting. But as we've been, you know, talking and working through this, and the demantalization of, I guess, families and fathers from families, and thinking about, you know, even the 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s in our country where we were segregated, but our families were strong, our education was strong, and then we decided to get into, you know, be integrated, and all these other things have happened. And I just believe so much in family and so much in trying to figure this out, because, you know, one of the things that we were talking about even before the show is, you know, when we find things that are wrong, who's willing to go and start doing the things to fix it? And just excited today to hear your story, to hear where you're at, the exciting things that you're doing. When I think about Journey to Freedom, and I think about people living in purpose, being willing to serve others. I don't know if you can live in purpose without serving others. You know, I guess it's possible, but I don't know how that you could do that. You know, when I think about us living our best lives in fulfillment, in happiness, and wondering, you know, I see, you know, when we're learning and we're creating, we're happy about that. When we're loving and we're in relationship, we're happy about that. You know, and then when we're giving and we're contributing, we're happy about that. And so, you know, today I was listening to, you know, somebody else's podcast, and they were talking about, you know, in order to have love and connection, you have to have conflict, you know, because there's going to be conflict in every relationship, and it's how we resolve those conflicts that determines whether we do well. And you don't really know what love is all about till you know what love's not about. You know, there's two sides of every coin, I guess. You know, I think Byron Golden says, have you ever seen a one-sided piece of bread? Have you ever seen a one-sided piece of paper? Have you ever seen a one-sided coin? You don't, because they don't exist. There's two sides to everything. So excited to have you on today. Excited that you're here. I can't wait to have this conversation and be able to chop it up. And I want you to start with your story, like I do with all of our guests. You know, start wherever you believe is the best place in your life to start, whether it's from your mama's womb or somewhere in the middle. But the floor is yours, and then we'll just chop it up after your story. So thanks for being on today.
Yeah, well, I can say I typically start, like, right after college. You know, I was a public relations major. You know, didn't really think much of college. Immediately got into technology sales, and I don't know, it just wasn't as enjoyable. And as someone who has always asked, like, why are we doing things in a certain way? It was just really difficult for me in corporate America, because I was always asking why. I was always asking, like, what's the point of this? Or I would ask, you know, I would ask questions about the future. Like, yes, we hit our number for this month, but, like, what about in a year when some of the things that are going really well aren't? What are we doing to prepare? And I found out, like, the majority of people don't feel that way. They don't care about what's going to happen in a year or 10 years. They typically care about, like, what are we doing right now? Are we doing what we need to do right now? Cool. And so eventually I left corporate America, different things happened where I just was like, I can't do this anymore, to be honest. And so I had some ideas of apps that I had been working on while I was there. And I just decided like, hey, I'm just going to try to keep doing this. And people had reached out because I had released some apps and they were like, can I learn more? And I got super into like personal development and just trying to change my life. And so in that process, I spent like 60K on like masterminds and coaching and all kinds of other things. And in the end, when I ran out of money, I just kind of fell out of those groups. You know, it was like, did I want it enough? Had I tried enough? And I was asking myself, I didn't know, I genuinely didn't have an answer. And so at that point, I kind of got a little bit more into spirituality where I started wondering if it wasn't so much about the answers, because there were those moments where the answers were really good and it felt good and it felt right. But then sometimes those answers weren't the right ones anymore. And so I started working on questions, like asking myself a question every day. And maybe it's a different question that I had been asking. Maybe the quality of the questions I had, or maybe the questions I thought mattered, they didn't matter as much. So I kept asking those questions. And that's what actually started helping me become a little bit, I guess, more free in general. Like I started asking better questions of myself. And eventually that's what turned into my book. So my book is called I Hope You Wake Up. I have another book that's going to be coming out soon called They Lied to You. And really, like, the premise of the book is like, what if the problems that we have as a culture aren't so much about the answers that we're arguing about, but more about the questions? And so I take the time to try to ask, like, what are some of the illusions that we believe are true? And that's what's maybe leading to some of the challenges we're having. And so in all of this, I've been building apps for all kinds of companies, Fortune 500 startups. And then I had this idea to help authors. So I'm an author, like I showed you, and I just thought it was ridiculous that Amazon keeps such a large percentage and doesn't tell readers what they can actually like, who, or doesn't tell authors who's actually read their book. So I made the company that pays 85 to 90% royalties within 72 hours, which is like industry leading. We're focused on helping authors actually sell their book. We work really hard to create a win-win process because I think the future is creators. Like, I think creators are going to be the people that make it possible. They're going to be like the ones that make money at the end of the day, because like more and more of our everyday tasks, like, I don't know, accounting or law or whatever, are becoming more and more AI based. You know, it's like easier for me to ask AI a question and then just take the answer to my lawyer and save a bunch of money. So, you know, I think more and more people are going to have to lean on the creativity. And I think if you are the person driving the sale, you should make more money and actually be able to make a living doing it. So now that's where we are. I literally just got back from London from the book fair. I'm working really hard to keep working with all these authors. We're distributing authors now. I mean, it's just incredible. So I'm excited to see what the future holds as I release the new book and then scale the company out to work with just our customers, the authors and publishers out there.
Cool. Well, that's, I mean, I love the part of, we're doing this. I went to the masterminds. I didn't learn. I started asking questions. When I think about identity, like, who you are, I mean, you kind of really showed us a lot about what you do or what you did, but who are you? What, like, when you shaped your identity growing up to become the person who said, okay, wait a minute, I want to go into technology, or I want to go to this, or, my parents said I could do this, but I decided I could do that. How was your identity shaped in the communities that you grew up in, and the
Well,
management?
I feel really blessed at the fact that in some ways I didn't always get to fit in. Like, I was always, I'm not going to sit here and say like I didn't get along with people or that like I was bullied, but like in general, I didn't necessarily fit in super well with a group. And like, especially where I grew up and like where my family was from, like my cousins and stuff, sometimes it didn't feel like I was like black enough. You know, like I was just like, it was never, I got that a lot growing up. I wasn't black enough. My dad's like, pretty light skinned, so he also like kind of understands that concept of hearing that, and I'd ask him about it. But it's like, it's weird when you're black but people act like for some reason you don't fit a mold, and it just makes you ask a question like, what does it mean to be black if someone black looks at you and says you're just not black enough? I don't like, it's not to say that they're right, wrong, or whatever, but it at least makes you question the identity that you have, which, like, if you're never questioned in your identity, then you can become very concrete in that without ever thinking about it. So it caused me to ask myself, like, what does it mean to be black? Or what does it mean to be a man? Or what does it mean to be, an entrepreneur, or whatever those things are? And you start to realize that, like, oftentimes we care a lot more about the validation of like the words than even sometimes what they actually mean. And by being so concrete on like what I believe my identity is, we can miss out on opportunities because we're saying to ourselves, That's not me," or "That's not us," or, "That's for those people over there," which I still did for a long time. I'll even, like, as a joke, I used to tell people, like, "Black people don't wear flip-flops." And then one day I wore some flip-flops to the beach and I was like, "Wow, like, this is a lot better. There's something to this."
Yeah.
So, like, you can end up just even like that kind of, it's a joke and it's funny about that, but like I kind of missed out on this opportunity because I want to wear sneaks to the beach. I'm like, I'm fly or whatever. But then it was like I started wearing flip-flops. I'm like, man, this is a lot easier. And like this makes a lot of sense. But our identities can help us feel connected to others, but can also keep us from the opportunities that are out there. And so like that's why I just like as an identity, I'm very lucky that in some ways I wasn't always accepted into any one space because it made me ask so much of what it meant to be a part of that space. And that helped me to just, I can be okay with the fact that I know I'm Black, but it also doesn't matter to me so much that people, maybe someone else might say, you're not Black enough for this space, or you're not like me in this way. So that's just, I guess that's the best way I can kind of describe my relationship with identity.
I like where that's going, because I think one of the things that has been a travesty, or just how our America, I guess, when I think about America, the number one thing that they've wanted us to know about ourselves, or the number one thing that they want us to believe, is that the
Mhm.
most important part about us is being Black. When
Mhm.
100% is not. I'm a father, I'm a
Yeah.
husband, I'm an entrepreneur, all these things that are my identity, but they want me to put that I'm Black up front,
Yeah.
as because they want me to, because of whatever. I think it's a lot of the inferiority that we believe that we have, or that we're not enough, and all the things that Blackness represents. Then they want
Mhm.
to say, okay, for the last 400 years, you haven't been part of our society, but the most important part about you is that the color of your skin, when it really isn't. And so much of what we say and we bring together and we get stuck on is in this culture of, okay, what does that mean to even be Black, right? And we're always
Yeah.
trying to figure it out, and how do I move myself through our society. When you were growing up, when you had your parents that were helping you with your identity, like we all shape ours,
Mhm.
were the communities and the things you were in, I guess, geared towards, this is what we do as a family, or was
Mhm.
it, kind of what was that upbringing like, maybe a little bit?
Well, I was homeschooled until high school, and
Oh,
I was
really? Okay.
homeschooled kind of out in the countryside. So my family is a little bit like non-traditional in maybe how I was raised as a
Mm-hmm.
Black person, just because I don't know many Black people that were homeschooled. And it was
Okay.
like there were more white people in that area, just like living out in, it was Northern Virginia, just kind of middle of
Uh-huh.
nowhere. But my family, it's funny, I can actually backtrack a little bit. So like my entire family on my dad's side is originally from Shelby, North Carolina. And my grandfather, when he decided, hey, I want to go to a place where there's more opportunity, moved to Reston to, basically be able to work at NASA and for the government at the time. And so my dad grew up in sort of a predominantly different sort of area. But then in turn, my dad wanted us to have certain opportunity and grow up in an area that was just a little bit better. So then we moved to a better, like just county as an infrastructure, I guess is a better way to put it, because I look at some of the infrastructures that some of my family grew up in that's extended, and I definitely can see some of the opportunity that I had that I maybe took for granted. But in all of that, what I can say is that my parents, because I was homeschooled, did a really good job of saying, hey, this is who we are as like the degrees, like that's my last name, and this is what we do as a family. And in some ways, though, because some of that fell apart when I got older, it again empowered me to question why I do things. Because sometimes, like as a family, you can get so caught up in the identity. Like there are these jokes that people always do where it's almost like kind of cultish how a family can be. But if you never have anything that causes you to question it, then you just sort of are just accepting things for what they were. So because everything kind of fell apart in some ways as I got older, it actually made me ask again questions about who am I? What do I want to do? Does this work for me in this frame of my life or not? And it's really helped me through that process to be as open to all the opportunities that are available to me. I'm not just stuck in one place saying this is how I have to be no matter what, even though I'm unhappy or even though I hate it or even though it's not even working anymore. I'm able to be, open to that. So I tell my parents all the time, I'm so thankful for how things ended up going, because I don't know that I would have ever even known to ask those questions if they hadn't made my identity so strong as a kid to then, things not work out. And that's like the beauty of every time something doesn't work out, you end up kind of giving yourself the opportunity to learn. So
Yeah, and I would love to know. I mean, so you go 1 through 8th grade, and then you go to a public school, I guess. I'm
yeah,
assuming
went to public school in high
after
school.
high school. What was that transition like? I mean, was the school way different because you had friends and stuff that were there, or was it like, wait a minute,
Mm,
I'm not even learning. I've already learned all this stuff. Why am I here? I mean, because usually folks that are homeschooled are so
yeah,
far ahead, and their thought process is so different. And now
yeah,
you're feeding into our indoctrination camps or whatever one of the schools that we call them.
yeah,
That you're learning how to be an employee is pretty much what we teach
yeah.
people, right? You have all different
I
types of.
think I think my parents, for better or worse, just always asked me why, and they would make me ask the question why. I did do a lot of reading growing up, and I learned a lot about just a lot of different things. I realized I'm probably in the top 0.5% of understanding biblical scriptures and stories. Just that was a big part of our learning
Okay.
process. There's a lot to critical thinking that they taught. And so school doesn't really give you the space for that. It's very
No.
much this is what we're learning. And why are you asking why? Why are you asking why you have to take AP
Yeah.
calculus? Why are you asking why the honors program exists or whatever? So that was the hardest part for me going in high school and college. I'm a super social person, so
Mhm.
being social with people isn't difficult. I always joke
It
a little
was
bit I have a lot of empathy and an openness trait. So when I meet someone, I'm automatically very I don't really care what I think. I'm trying to understand what you think. So that makes it very easy to shift in between different places. But I remember I was in an accounting class in college, and I just was like, why are we doing this? And the teacher's like, what do you mean, why are we doing this? I was just like, I don't understand why we're doing this. I think it's dumb. Can you tell me, can you validate your why we're doing it this way? And I mean, I had asked the same questions in high school and eventually just kind of stopped asking because it's just they don't really have an answer.
no,
So
no.
yeah. So that was that was the thing that was the most funny about it. It was I was like, why are we doing that was the hardest part about school. I'd just be like, why are we doing this? And no one ever could give me a good answer, which, I just would always keep that in my back pocket of I don't know that this matters at all. So that was the hardest part about the switch to high school is just people not being able to validate the reason that we're doing things. So yeah.
Well, I think it kind of translates into you working for somebody else as well as you had and saying, wait a minute, why am I doing this? Why am I spending
Mhm.
this time doing this all day long? Because
100%.
is it really creating profit for the company? Am I just, especially when you have I guess if you're in jobs and you have managers and stuff. When I
Yeah.
was teaching, I would always question principals and stuff this is dumb. Why? How are we teaching kids like this? I was, when I went to university and I was an administrator, and so I ran my department a little bit different than other professors did. And then they're like, "Well, why do you want me to do this? I don't want this is like you said, this is dumb. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
If the university's trying to make money, then why are we doing stuff counterproductive? If to me, if I pass every student and they've learned the information, then that's a good thing. Why do you want me to have a percentage that don't pass?
Right. I remember that was when I changed my major from business to communications, there was this professor I had, and he just was started the class off just kind of saying that he had a higher than 50% failure rate. And I just kind of was I was like, why are doesn't that make you a bad teacher? I just don't understand. We're
50%
we're
failure.
learning for a test. Why is your barometer of success or validation of success not 100% of my students pass? I don't understand. I didn't understand it genuinely. So I asked him about it, and he was just like, this is a class that makes or breaks students to find out if this is what they want to do. And I'm like, yeah, but you're the teacher. I don't understand. Conceptually, can you explain to me why you think it's good to have students fail? Wouldn't that? And I don't know. That was when I was getting older, I started realizing that a lot of times we eventually just say accept an answer to be yes. You just stop asking why. So you finally get to a point, it validates some part of your existence, and so this is yes from now on. And when you ask questions of people about why they do something a certain way and they haven't actually asked that question, they typically get very angry. I really pissed off a lot of professors and teachers for this basic reason of asking why. Why? And they're like, what do you mean why? Who asked why? What's wrong with you? Who do you think you are, Django? I'm like, I don't know. I don't even know who I am. I'm just asking why. So that was something that I think is really interesting, like with you describing that with like the percentage of people who need to pass. Like, why wouldn't you want 100%? Why wouldn't that be the way that we set up success as a teacher? I
Yeah,
don't know.
to me, that means that I'm 50% failure. 50% of my students don't pass my class. That means I didn't teach them what they were supposed to learn in order to pass. You know, I still love it because it reminded me of the story of the ham. You know, they cut off the ends of the ham
Hmm.
at Thanksgiving,
Hmm.
and then they put it in the oven, and then they were so one of the I guess it was one of the children said, "Well, why do you cut off the ends of the ham every year we come over here? You cut off the ends of the ham, you put it
Right.
in, and you put it in the oven." And then she goes, "I don't know why." Well, let's call grandma. Grandma, why do we do it? I don't know, because my grandma did it. Then okay, so great grandma's still alive. And great grandma, why do you cut off the ends of the ham before you put them into the oven? She said, because the oven wasn't big enough, and I didn't have to put them
Right.
on. It's not like you said, we just accept the answers.
Yeah.
The reason we did it was because I didn't have an oven that would fit the ham, so we cut the ends off. And then
100%.
it just became a tradition, and people do it. Oh my gosh, I love where we're going. When I think about trust, because that's kind of one of we got to trust the people that are
Yeah.
around us that we're in proximity to and our associations. And so one of the reasons that I even started Journey to Freedom because things were being stuck and we were struggling as a community to trust. We have trouble trusting ourselves. We have trouble
Mhm.
trusting each other. We have trouble trusting our women. We have trouble trusting white men. Whatever the society is that we do, although trust is so important. How has your ability to trust impacted your career, the things that you're doing? I mean, you're able to go to London. Do you trust the
Mhm.
people that are overseas more than you do the people that are
Mhm.
here? Or is it just because you have relationships that you create relationships? What when you think
Yeah.
about trust, talk to
I
me a
can
little bit.
say this is there are a few moments that I can actually highlight along this line of trust. I
Okay.
remember when I was first creating like a full scale trying to do a company. There was a black guy that I just remember I called him. My mom had connected me with him. He was like he could help me with the building the product. And I was like, "Hey, I need you to sign an NDA before I tell you the idea." And he was like, "Django, I'm gonna tell you something." Like, and he went through this whole part. He like explained to me that 99% of people have no interest in your idea. And then of that, 1% of the people who maybe have interest could ever steal your idea. So you're going to have to trust and just be open to the numbers, the percentage chance of this. And I feel like I run into this within like the black community more than any other community where there's like kind of a general distrust that people are going to steal something. Like people will reach out to me because now, like I've built a venture back startup. I've done certain things. They're like, Django, I got this great idea. I want to tell you about it. It's going to change your world. But I need you to sign an NDA first. And I'm like, I just tell the same story to everyone. It's like, we gotta, to some extent, trust and not be so afraid that people are going to steal the stuff we have, because then it doesn't allow for us to be open and connected. Like me and my co-founder, when me and him first met, I told him the idea that I had. He told me he loved the idea. We started building before we ever created a company or did anything. He was developing it. I was just working, and then we signed contracts later. I'm not saying that that's the best thing to do, but like the ability to be open and unafraid opens you up to more opportunities than being afraid that everyone wants to steal your stuff or take your stuff. So I can say, like, without a doubt, having to just let go of the chance that someone could steal my stuff has actually opened up the opportunity for me to trust like a lot. And then the other side of this that I've noticed is we typically can only trust others to the extent that we can trust like ourselves. And so like when I first got into corporate America, and even when I was in college, there's like this underlying thing where you need to get stuff in writing, because if you don't have it in writing, you can't prove that it actually happened. And I remember one day I was like, if we're saying that I have to get it in writing because the person, when the time comes, may lie, we're saying that we understand that we all will lie if it means that we'll get what we want. And I do think as a culture, like, we're not very honest with ourselves about the fact that we are very comfortable with lying if we feel like it's what's best for us. And then we rationalize after. Amazon's so big, it doesn't matter that we had to do a return. This is for me to hit my number and feed my kids. So I need to do this in order to do this. So like what I started to recognize within myself was part of my inability to trust others was as much about like in those moments where, I'm at a crossroads where I can get the thing that I want, and, in turn, or be honest, I truthfully wasn't willing to be honest. So I've been able to trust more the more honest that I've been willing to be. Granted, it doesn't always work out in my favor, right? Like sometimes if I just lied and yelled and cussed out somebody on the Amazon hotline, I would have gotten the return and the other stuff. But because I'm being nice, I don't get the thing. But I definitely had to start deciding that I would be trustworthy and honest myself, even though maybe the rest of the other people decide not to be, because I don't know how it would ever get better if I'm just not willing to do that. So I can say that about trust too. Like those are those two sides of moments where I can really say like trust helped me a lot.
I love that because when we think just the fact that you're saying people are willing to lie to rationalize. And
Yeah.
I do a 3 mile walk every day.
Uh-huh.
And this the other day, I'm just thinking, somebody, I don't know who I was listening to on the podcast I was going, and they started talking about, our propensity to lie. And I was thinking, well, Jesus, without sin, went 33 years without lying.
Mhm.
When I start thinking of even myself and the lies I say to myself on a weekly basis, the things that I do to rationalize, and I love the fact that that is important to you, and it's something that you're thinking about. And then I think about like contracts in our world are based on a mutual distrust. We don't. That's what a contract is both of us don't trust each other, so we're going to put in a contract
Right.
that puts parameters around a mutual distrust. When I think of like a covenant, where it's this is based on, hey, we're going to do this together, or we'll die trying.
Right.
And just that whole process of how do we start building. And I think a lot of it comes down. You can test this is there's just a belief, especially in our community, that there's so much lack. I think of our last, and not, I think the world's got abundance. There's a million resources, but we're worried somebody's going to steal my one idea. We're worried that I can't come up with another idea. This is my one idea that
Yeah.
I'll have for the rest of my life. And then, and fear, the fear is that we paralyze ourselves
Hmm.
because of this fear of lack. And I think of just this, all the folks that I've been talking to since our election,
Hmm.
and it's all based on fear. Well, what if they take this? What if we? And we're going down this path of what ifs. And on my call last night, somebody was actually talking about that they're going to take benefits away from veterans, in a big way. And I don't see it. I
Hmm.
think there's other things they're going to be able to do. The folks that serve their country and how they got to do it, but literally in fear, like, well, I guess I'm not going to spend any of my money ever again because, or I'm going to move to London because
Hmm.
whatever those fears are. And just want your thought on lack versus abundance and opportunity, and in a world where we live, we use our minds and imagination to create it. We're not using our hands hardly anymore. And so if our minds are indefinite.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I think I've been working on a thought, so I could misspeak on this, but like it's very easy to create an identity with another group based on looks. I would say it's the easiest one. So,
Yeah.
for
Mhm.
instance, like being in London or going overseas or reading history, you find out that like even if all the people look the same, they found ways to split themselves into groups, right? So like in America, I think it's been the easiest to try to identify a separation of groups by look. And then we even like got into the point of you may look the part, but then we're still like giving names to how you're different, octoroon or whatever the number is, right?
Mhm.
But the thing that's interesting is the identity of a group in most cases ends at a point where we say these people are excluded from the group. And it's really easy to have a very like strong ourselves group thought process when we
Mhm.
can really truly identify like this is what we're up against. So like when I talked to my grandfather, for instance, who, did sit-ins and all these other things, there was a strong unification of it's us versus them. Like
Mhm.
we have to do this together. Otherwise, like it's just not going to work. I think that's where a lot of our like strength came from. Like it's from the identity of there's no question that we're against these people. And like my grandfather actually told me that he always kind of wished for separate but equal. Like that was what he wanted. He didn't want to integrate at all. He didn't want it to be like MLB. He wanted to be Negro leagues and in this league. He just wanted it to be equal because he recognized that like there was a value to like us being us, like us identifying and being able to very easily identify ourselves as this. And so the thing that's interesting about all this is like now the question is like what is it that we value? Like that's where I have a really hard time. It always comes down to money. Like there's always those jokes like would you punch your mom until for like $1 million, and then like the videos like this guy like punching a wall or whatever like it's his mom, or like I just feel like the value at the core is the money. And so if the money is the only thing that matters in this case, how can you ever trust like anyone? Because we're all like basically we've all admitted to the fact that it's not about like trusting ourselves and trusting to do the right thing or being a part of this group. It's just like it's about the money. Like and so then in turn, like it is a scarcity mindset because you're like, I got to get the money as fast as possible. I got to figure out how to get it by any means possible. I got to get rich or die trying. I got to like, it's always like, this is the only time that I have to do this because, it's just perfect timing. Otherwise, like I'll never be able to get back. Because it's almost like, who's your group? Who are we building the foundation for? What are we, doing to go forward? Like, I'll finish it with this thought. This is a video that I made recently. The Shard, which is one of our more famous buildings in London, took 3 years to build. Big Ben took 10 years to build. I forget, I say the word wrong all the time. It's like the Westminster Abbey, like the abbey that's nearby there, took 250 years to build. The person who created that, who knew like, hey, this is what we're going to build, knew that in their entire lifetime, there's no chance you're going to see this. But there's enough trust and a belief in what could be in the future of like the foundation that we have, that you would start to build something and people would spend their entire lives for like 4 generations to build something that none of them would get to see. And I think that's like really only possible if at the baseline there's trust. And then on the next level, there's an idea that it's not about the scarcity of like, this is the only idea we have. It's like we're building towards something bigger than just money or financial freedom or whatever the thing is. Like that's sort of where like I was trying to, I guess in a way, like this is how I've just been thinking about it lately. Like maybe in that baseline, there's this loss of both trust and then in turn a fear of not getting enough of what's yours, that we can never really like come together to build this bigger thing because we're all very much in like our little boxes. Like this is my little group within Black. This is my little group within left or right or whatever. It just makes it very difficult to view things from an abundance perspective where you're saying I could potentially build something that could last a lifetime because me and this group are coming together to build something beyond ourselves. So that's like I don't have the idea fully fleshed. That's why it takes so long to describe, but it's just all like I'm working through that as I'm writing this book. And I don't really understand what it is, but there's something in what I'm saying that's true. I just don't have the word for it yet, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I love what you're saying because it makes you think: do we have to just jump into this, scarcity mindset?
Yeah.
Because it's there. I was watching a show last night,
Mm-hmm.
and as I was thinking about it, I've been thinking about the same concept. In the show, the guy on the show is saying, "I have this opportunity to be wealthy," and he
Mm-hmm.
goes to his wife and he says, "Wife, I would like to be wealthy, but in order for me to be wealthy, that means I have to take from somebody who already has what I want."
Mm-hmm.
Because there's not enough for both of us to have. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to take. And then they gave some kind of analogy about, so you're saying that in order to do that, I have to go to the queen and, in the cat that's in the castle. And if I want her castle, I got to throw her out the window. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And the wife goes, well, darling, if you got to take from somebody, make sure you take them to the point where you throw them off the building that's high enough that they can never come back and take it back.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh my God. That's the issue in our country. That's the issue everywhere is people say, in order for me to have, I must have to take. And make your life.
I wonder. So, like, again, this comes back to identity, maybe a little bit. If the furthest thing that you identify with is like yourself and what you're going to get, I think we end up in the place we're at. Where, like, for instance, we're saying, "Hey, Social Security is going to run out soon," and people are like, "Yeah, I agree, we should fix it, but like, I don't want to lose mine. So whatever you do, don't mess it up for me." Right?
Yeah,
Like, hey, Medicaid is going to run out of money. We all agree on that. Like what's funny to me is like I've never heard anyone say Social Security's not going to run out of money. I've heard this for like 10 years now that we're like just kind of staring down a black hole. And the argument back is though, I'm not willing to trade off for whatever is mine. So in turn, we never fix the problem. We just kind of like kick the can down the road. And I just kind of feel like that is our biggest challenge as like a culture is like individually we do like obvious. I don't know what the balance is. To some extent, if everyone wants everything, then no one ever gets anything in a way, because we just keep sort of causing more problems because everyone's sort of like fighting against themselves in a way. Because you're like, I want to see change. I'm just not willing to see change now. So like maybe we'll leave it to the kids, or maybe, we'll take from this other group that's not me. But like, as long as that's sort of our back and forth, I don't really know how we can ever move forward, because it's not like sacrifice is almost the wrong word. It's like we're just not open to another way of doing things, because we're like, this is how it's always been done. Like you reach a certain age, you get Social Security, I paid my part, period. And it's like, yeah, but it's going to run out. And it's like, okay, well, it's not my problem. I did my part. It should work. I don't care that someone else messed it up or took money from it. This is mine. So, that's like an identity thing. Like, this is my group. Our group voted for this. This is what we should get. And it's like, I don't know how we can ever move forward if everything's always about at least just the largest group. Maybe is how it kind of functions right now. Like whoever has the largest voice just decides this is how we're going to do it for now, and then the next group becomes a larger voice because they're so pissed off about not getting what they wanted. I don't know, but yeah.
Well, I love it. So help me on this one, because this is just me and my thought process here.
Mm-hmm.
And you took that accounting class. I'm assuming you passed it, so you can understand this. Every time that we actually say we're going to run out of money, we just make more. And then we say, well, we're going to borrow from China or whoever else. Well, they're just making up money, right, to loan it. It's like, do we just keep making up money? Do we just keep making money, or eventually it's going to run out back by anything? It's just we print it and then we say this is how we trade goods back and forth.
Well, I think this is what I find interesting. So like, I run a venture-backed startup, so I have a very interesting thought process on this. If I go out and I raise a round for, let's say we get to the point where I'm going to raise $1 billion round at, and we're going to raise $200 million on that. We're going to dilute everyone who has shares by 20%. That's just how that works. We are going to create shares out of thin air to create value so that people can invest in this. And then technically speaking, all of us have less of the company, but hopefully it's worth more. Mm-hmm. Theoretically, what I see going on is like, we have a problem right now because we don't know how to not spend more than currently exists. So then we just print more to kick the can down the road. The challenge is like, the longer you do that, at some point, like, we just get to a point. Like, we can say there's inflation, not inflation, change the CPI numbers however we want, but like, we can't pretend that saying that a pot of, like, let's just say for lack of better numbers, like $1 billion and $1 trillion doesn't cause the person who has a fixed income of 100,000 to lose the ability to like do something, right? Like at the end of the day, the assets that exist can't change that much. There's only so much chicken, so many cows, so much lumber. You're just slowly increasing the price because in order to maintain the percentage of the size, it just is what it is. So I hear the arguments everyone makes, like, we have to do this, but like, you don't have to do anything. You choose to do something. And typically when someone tells me they have to do something, it's typically the easiest thing for them to do, which I think that's the case we're in. It's like, again, like I said before, I don't want to give up my money that I get for Social Security. I'm not giving it up. Okay, you're not giving it up. We're not going to change anything. So we're just going to print more and then take some of the print and put it over here. And then, it just artificially inflates the amount of available currency. So you can do that, I guess, until people are angry enough that they're angry. I mean, we've seen this happen before, happen in Britain, happen in Germany, happen in Russia. I mean, this isn't like a new concept. You just print until everyone's too poor. We just saw it in Venezuela. Like, eventually dollars will be toilet paper if we keep up with this. But I mean, like, I don't have an answer. It doesn't really seem like anyone's ever really been able to get this in control when they have the ability to do it, because I think we lack control in general as humans. So I don't know. That's my rant. I don't talk about it too much, but I just think it's funny because
I'm glad I got you to do it. Though. I'm glad I got you.
Yeah, you got me to do it. I don't know. Like, I don't know how. It seems like elementary math. If we're like on the playground and there's X amount of toys and there's not enough toys to go around, and you just introduce more toys, it doesn't make people better at sharing. It just means there's more toys here. So like,
this is more toys.
Yeah, the toys have less value, right? Like, they would be less valuable to the kids because you don't have to share them around. So there's just, I mean, I don't know. I feel like it's easy, but everyone makes it more complicated than it needs to be.
Yeah, way more complicated. I want to talk. You talked about your journey, and you talked about where you went to these masterminds, and then you said you became more spiritual. Maybe
Mhm.
kind of talk about your spiritual journey a little bit and how that impacts and reacts to the things that you do now in life, whatever that is.
Yeah, yeah. I think, uh I think what's interesting is when I look back at the masterminds and stuff, it reminded me a lot of church. So, like,
Mhm.
growing up in church, like, it was kind of a very similar structure. Music that's very uplifting. Everyone is there with a common cause. You bring in people to speak. I remember, like, back in the day, I go to my grandma's church, the guest speaker comes in halfway through the singing, and, then they come up and they talk. There's a there's sort of an end where, like, we typically would do like a tithe for that person, but in this case the person would sell us like the book, and we'd be like, wow, what an amazing book. And then this person also has a mastermind we should go to, which reminded me a lot of like a church. Like, it's just interesting that the structures, when I think back to it, are so similar. And so that's what eventually kind of got me to the place where starting to realize that there is a value to it. It's not that people did something wrong. I think there's something to like the human condition that enjoys being in a space with like-minded people where we are all working towards some positive common goal. And in all of these cases, money can become an issue, right? Like, you get to like a mega church size, or you get to the point where people are like, you got to give that 10% tithe, even if it's your last. Very similar issue, right? Like, where money becomes an underlying like prescriber of success for the church or for the mastermind. So, like, I loved being there. I loved the space. I loved the feeling. I love the music. I love the joy. I love feeling like I had an opportunity to build something. But I definitely realized that you can get so caught up in the validation of the space that you can lose track of the goal that you actually had. Like, my goal has always been to like support creators, help them in any way I can, and eventually, when I have the means, help orphans and foster kids. But then, like, what I realize now is in some ways I got so caught up in the validation of that space. Like, I was giving money to maintain the validation of that space, even when that space wasn't necessarily being helpful for the goals that I actually had. So, like, for me, I've recognized that there's a value to being around people who are, again, like-minded, want to be positive, want to grow, want to be there with you. And that can be found almost anywhere if you are actually like that, which I found that I had to be honest with myself. I wasn't like that. Like, I wanted to be negative. I wanted to be like, this is just the way the world is. It's crappy. It's this, it's that. And as I've changed my language and worked on being more positive, I've just had more positive people in my life. And sometimes I still go to church or different churches. Sometimes I, just try to be open in the space and ask people about what they feel. And you just get surprised when people are actually open and communicative. Some people get angry. I can't, like I said, people typically get angry when you ask a why that they're not ready to have a conversation about. But that's what I can say for sure. Like, it's something beautiful about that space, but you do need to ask yourself, like, what is it that I'm getting out of this space? Because even in church, like, I've had this, I had it happen to me in churches where, like, it's not really about the faith anymore. It's not really about your relationship with God. Maybe it's about what I feel like I am here. Sometimes it's about, like, the money that you're getting out of it or whatever the case is. So that's sort of where I ended up, at least on like the religious part. From a spiritual perspective, nothing has been better than just being honest with myself and asking the questions of myself every day that I have to be honest with myself to answer. Like, am I really putting my best foot forward? Um, do I really just like, do I want to be right more than I want to be happy today? Like, am I arguing with people for no reason just so that I can get that like emotional, umph that I prove that person wrong? Am I taking the time to pray and ask, not for stuff, but more of like clarity and openness to what's around me, instead of it being like, I need to get this next thing. So, it's just a weird journey, but I think it just never ends. Sometimes we're always looking for an answer, and I think it's more about just asking the right questions, again, like I was saying before.
Thank you for sharing those questions too, because I think when you say I'm asking myself the questions, my thought was, well, what questions are you asking?
Yeah.
What
Well,
do
it's
you
like one of
say?
one of the questions I had to ask myself was like, can you, like, one of the questions in my book, it's like, can you unconditionally love anyone if you don't unconditionally love everyone? Because, like, I knew that I had said I unconditionally love certain people, but I had conditions on others. So, like, is the unconditional love that I'm saying is unconditional? I just haven't found the conditions yet, because I have conditions already set where I would shut people out. Maybe
Mhm.
what I say the condition is like blood. Maybe I say the condition is whatever, but like, I've actually really set conditions. So really, no one actually can be loved unconditionally. I'm really choosing conditional love. But like, at least I became aware of it. Like, suddenly now I'm asking myself, like, wow, I'm like, another question I asked was like, which version of the voice in my head am I? Like, seriously, Do you ever like think about the fact that you can be like having some weird conversation in your head where you're both the negative and the positive? You know, when you wake up, you set an alarm for 5 a.m. So a part of you knows that you should wake up and do this thing. But then there's this other voice that's like, I don't really want to work out today. But like, are you thinking? I never had thought about the fact that like I'm neither voice though. Like I'm actually not either. It's because they're both there. But like maybe I'm more the the awareness of the voice. I don't know, but like it's pretty weird that you have two different people going off in your head about not getting up for this workout. And I think it's also weird that we identify with one more than the other. What if I'm neither of those voices and I'm the person who knows what I have the capability of doing and is the reason I set the alarm before? Like it just you just start to, if you're willing to ask those questions that maybe you've never asked before because no one ever thought to even give you those words, all of a sudden you're like, wow, like, yeah, it's weird. Maybe I can just be nicer to myself and like, go work out because I love working out. Or maybe I can love people just because, I'm grateful for that they're in my life, or, whatever you decide. I don't really care what people decide. That's why I didn't give answers. I just want people to have the words to ask the question, to decide for themselves.
Well, you're absolutely confirming to me that the spiritual, invisible world is, to me, more real than the manifestation of the world we actually live in, because we do. The thoughts that we have on a daily basis, that, the fact that you and I can have this conversation from the different parts of the world, that it's still
Yeah.
work, technology, whatever, it's just, oh my gosh, I love it. I want to, talk a little bit about, for Black men,
Hmm.
they say their average age is going to be, that we die at is 72. There's so
Hmm.
many men that I talk to that have so much to give, but they're just not healthy. They're just, they're
Yeah.
fighting their weight, or they're fighting their, all of the diseases, that high blood pressure and diabetes, and you're young enough now where it's probably not impacting you the way I just turned 60 last week, and so it's a bigger thought in my mind. I want to live to, my dad's 86 and he's still running track meets, and
Wow.
my mom's 80 and she's doing phenomenal. And I'm thinking, you know, for my own mortality, what are some things that you're doing now to make sure? And I don't want to just mean physical health, because I also want to talk
Mhm.
about mental health a little bit, because as we're thinking all these thoughts and you're asking all these questions, how
Mhm.
do you, keep your mind? I love that you're writing books and
Yeah.
get out there, but how are you staying healthy?
Well, I have an interesting thought about this. So at one point I was like 260 pounds, but all
Really?
very big, very fat. And
Uh-huh.
I decided I wanted to lose the weight. So I went pretty David Goggins, if you know who that is. Very like two a days. We're
Mhm.
going after it. Eventually I cut out meat completely for a period of time and I was vegan. I did fasting. I fasted for over like a week, a couple of times, like a water fast. And what was interesting in all of this, because I've been from 260 to 198 to like I hover at like 230. It's a healthy weight. I did carnivore where I literally only ate meat. What was really interesting in all of this is I realized that like there's a quote that I say all the time. It's like it's neither good nor bad. Thinking makes it so. I realized that like, and I wrote this in my book, the chains that I had forged where I was unhappy with myself and I ate too much and I did all these different things became the same chains I would create for myself when it came to like fasting and other places, because I could really only accept myself to the ability of like the validation that I got. So like my unhealthy relationship with food came from a place of love for my family because I ate the most out of anybody. And it was always like a joke that Django could eat anything. I used to be called like a vacuum. I ate a pizza, I ate a sub. So it grew until I was older and I wasn't working out as much. It turned into a problem. And I like couldn't stop eating because I didn't understand. Like I couldn't not finish the plate because of things that had happened in my childhood that weren't even negative. It was just like I never asked. Then I got to a healthy relationship with food, I felt like. But then all of a sudden I can't accept myself if I don't go to the gym. And I'm like, Django, you piece of trash. Like you're supposed to get to the gym every day, even though I've been to the gym every day for the last 3 years. And I
Mhm.
realized like the aches and pains that I had being like big and fat, I now had working out every day and pushing my body so far that it was like breaking down in some ways, or fasting, even though I didn't need to fast. Like it was just, so there's this issue, I think, sometimes of like asking the question of like, why am I doing this? Why can't I do things for the love of myself rather than it being like I'm a piece of trash and I got to beat myself up to do the right thing? And that's where I finally got to a shift where like it's not about doing things because I need to be better, or this has to be for the future generations or my ancestors are watching. Like, why can't I just love myself to do the thing that I need to do today? Like, why can't I just like wake up and say, whether it's praying, whether it's doing things that are unconventional to what other people might say, or it's doing things for my physical health. Like, why can't I do that from like a space of saying that I love myself enough? I also just recognize in general within the Black community, between guys, it's weird for us to say that we love each other. I see a lot of people trying to make like content to say like we should do it more often, but the truth of the matter is we can only give the love that we have already, and most of us only love ourselves to the condition that we can accept ourselves, whatever that means. Like if it's I'm the workout person, I'm the hood person, I'm the hard person, I'm the father, whatever. Like you can only love yourself to the extent that you can give that to yourself. You can only give that out to the extent you can give to yourself. So I just really like it took coming all the way back to saying like I'm gonna do things because I just care about myself. Because I just love myself. Because it's cool to just like myself. I just like spent so long trying to fix myself, but it's like like if it's a why am I viewing myself as like a problem that needs to be fixed? Why can't it just be that I'm living and I'm happy and I'm enjoying life and I'm doing things? Because it's like, why wouldn't I want to go to the gym? Why wouldn't I want to eat this watermelon rather than the Skittles? Why is it a problem for me to eat Skittles if I haven't had any artificial sugar for a year? Like, why can't I just accept myself in this moment to do whatever I think is best for myself, mentally or physically? And that's the place that eventually I got to for throughout all of the spaces that I've been in, from vegan to carnivore to being big to being small to all those different things. So, yeah.
Wow. But man, you just have me thinking, like my mind's just being blown right now, because I think we're only as good as the questions that we ask ourselves, right? And you're asking yourself all these just incredible questions. The book that you wrote is "I Hope You Wake Up."
Mhm.
And I feel like I'm waking up. Just having a conversation with you. But I have been selfish, and I have talked, so much about, what I wanted to know about who you are, Django. What I would love to, take this last 10 minutes that we have together and just kind of let you talk about your books and your company and whatever it is that we didn't talk about
Yeah.
that you would love for us to talk about, because I want to make sure that our audience and the folks who listen to this get a real vision of what is possible.
Well, I told you that the book I'm working on right now is called They Lied to You. And I
Mhm.
don't want to give too much of the structure of it out, but like
Okay.
earlier I said that like when you get to corporate America or when you're in school, people kind of tell you the unwritten rules of how honest people are going to be. Like when I got into, especially now owning my own company, it's not about what happened. It's about what you can prove. It's like we live in this world very much of like, we've all accepted it conceptually. You have to have like a paper trail. You have to know and like have in writing what the truth is. And I think it's because as a culture, we've just kind of accepted this idea of like lying, not just to each other, but like to ourselves, to wake up and rationalize why I'm not where I want to be or anything else. And so like I Hope You Wake Up as a book was more about like, what if reality isn't what you thought it was? And then this next book, They Lied to You, is how did we get here? Like potentially, what lies did we just accept as true across the board, from the teachers, the family, the concepts, things that worked for our ancestors that was only because at the time they oh wow, that's huge. Our ancestors that that they didn't have an oven that was large enough, so they cut the sides of the ham off, and then we just kept doing it even though maybe we're not in that same place. Maybe that was all they had at that time, but now we're still sort of doing the same things even though we're maybe not in that same place. So like that's what that second book is, and eventually there'll be a third book, but I haven't I try not to say, but it'll basically be what maybe where we can go forward with that. So like in my mind, because I've asked all these questions, the reason I created my company, Wrote by Me, is that I realized like there's all these concepts that people talk about when you hear them talk about rich people and what they do and how they did it and how they took from people and how it's not okay to be a billionaire and all these other things. And I just think that we could actually create companies that are win-wins for people. Like it doesn't have to be that I take from other people. It could be that we do an industry leading standard where readers are the winners and we win because authors are the winners, and we don't need a whole bunch of money at every step. That it's not about like maximizing the profit out of every single step, but I could still win as a company. I still could, become a billionaire, but like do it in a way that helps people be able to achieve their goals and dreams, and like I also recognize that maybe the oven is finally large enough for me to be able to do that. Right? Maybe up to this point, we've always had to cut the ham a certain way because the technology wasn't there, or intellectually I don't know what it was, but I see a path that maybe I can do that. And that's why we're so focused on like helping the authors and publishers, cutting through the noise. We could have taken a higher percentage, but I really wanted to like make sure that we created as win-win of a scenario as possible. And I'm trying to do the same thing in my book. So my dream is to give people, because it may not be me, like, right, my company could fail, no one could like my books, but maybe from this conversation, someone else goes, maybe life could be different. And that's like the stepping stone. That's how, like, the Abbey gets built in 250 years. Maybe I don't get to see it, but conceptually, maybe we could view like capitalism in a different light, rather than it being like exploiting people. It's about bringing everybody together for us to, win together. There's enough for everyone. It's just like, we just have to believe that already, which is what I believe. I believe there's enough. There is enough for everyone. There's enough for people to not be hungry. There's enough. We just have to figure out a way to disseminate things in a way, which does require someone to make a decision, right? Like, even when people talk about like socialism and other concepts, someone eventually is the person who says, this is where we're spending the money, unless you're like trying to vote on it. But even then, after you vote on it, someone could say the vote's not true or whatever. So my hope is that I can just shine that light to the world, that like, again, what if what we think has to be is an illusion? Maybe if we start asking how we got here and why, like maybe they did lie to us, and we can start to figure out why we even got here. And then how can we move forward is like that next thought that I have. So I'm more than happy to connect with any authors if they need help to get their book out there, to distribute it, to come up with plans. We're always looking to help authors. And then if you want to check out the book, you can check it out at my link. It's wroteby.me/Django, which I'll share with you, and we'll put in. It has everything. So yeah, I'll send that over to you.
Okay. Any websites or anything that we need to go to?
That's the main one. So if you go to wroteby.me/Django, that is my way to get my books, but also to follow me on all my social links. And then that's my company too. So if you go to wroteby.me, that's how you actually find. So, I always joke, I'm my own customer. I pay full price for it because I want to show people I really believe in it. So that's the best way to connect with me. You find everything there.
Absolutely. Thank you. What are some closing thoughts that you'd love to give everybody who's listened to us today that is saying, wait a minute, I know I'm more. I know, that I'm not enough is not where I want to be. I want to be. I know I'm more. So
I think sometimes I will just be honest. I think I can be a frustrating person to listen to, because I don't really leave you with like the keys to the answer. But that is like by design. I think like we were raised in school in certain places where we looked to someone to give us the right answer, and then that gave us the validation that we're on the right path. And so in turn, we've looked for that as we've gotten older. And I don't want to tell people, like, I don't want to tell you how to do things. I just want to potentially give you the questions that you never had, that could lead you to the answer that you can be happy with. And so, yes, maybe you're questioning yourself and you're like, what's that next step? I'm not going to tell you it's working out 3 times a day, or that it's, quitting your job and doing other things. I'm just going to say, like, maybe we could ask like how we got here, or why we're okay with being here, or what could we be if I was unafraid. If you ask the question, one of my favorite questions, what kind of life do you want to gift your time? If you knew the exact amount of time that you had left, what would you do? And that's just like, that's what I try to leave people with. It's not about me giving you an answer. It's just more about me potentially giving you a structure of words that could help you in the next steps of like, well, actually, I'd like to do this. I'd like to own a little ice cream shop. I'd like to go have a farm. I'd like to stay in my 9 to 5. I actually love it here. I just feel like there was maybe something I was missing. Who knows? I don't, but you definitely do. And that answer is in you. So I believe in you 100%.
Yeah, no, I love that, because there's so many of us who that we believe that we want somebody to tell me how to do this, tell me how to get here, tell me what, and then we realize after we go through some of that process that that's not what we really want. But if we learn how to ask the right questions, right? If we learn how to learn the way that God has put us on this earth to be able to do, then there's abundance, there's an infinite ways that we can take that. And so what I got out of our conversation today is I'm not frustrated, I'm more excited, because I get to think about the questions that I do need to ask myself, the questions that I do need to put in there. And so Thank you for being on the show today, Django. This has been amazing. I can't wait to talk to you some more and to, to follow your life and the things that you're doing. For those of you, that say, hey, this was a good episode. If you find somebody that could benefit from it, hey, send it over to them. Let them listen to it. Hit the notification button as we're giving as many of these that we possibly can to folks. And I just want you to remember that you, my friend, are God's greatest gift. He loves you if you allow him to. And we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one. You guys have an amazing day. Thank you, Django, for being on. Appreciate it.